Thank you so much, Barbara and BLP. Absolutely honored to be here on this call this afternoon. It was a great experience for me, Barbara, personally. What I had to do is I had to do this in phases. And it actually spent a few years for me since I started doing my competency assessments. So I would write a few things in each of the the skill sets, and then I will go back and then revisit them. As I gained more experience, I was able to go back and start completing each of these sections. And the same happened with the competencies. So I had paused, and then I progressed, and then I would revisit my work. And the whole exercise, I just completed end of 2023, beginning of this year. The results have been outstanding. We've been getting a few more leads through the process. I was able to revisit my practice. I was able to see new connections. And as I did the exercise, I also looked at what I had to do in my practice. A couple of things like confidentiality, and I didn't have those. And I went and did that, and came back and completed the assessment. So awesome. It has been very good exercise. And I think as we go along through the webinar, we'll be discussing this further.
Thanks for that, Raj. And that's exactly the approach that we kind of hope people will take with it. It's a guide to how to have a fabulous practice. Now, we're not all perfect as advisors, and sometimes you need to build your practice over time. So it's great to hear that you've used it like that, and it's given you a little bit of a prompt for reflection on what you do. And well, congratulations in particular achieving that gold mark, Raj. I mean, not only have very few BLP approved advisors gone through that process, which we will talk about a little bit later, but there are very few people that have got the gold mark. So it is indeed a mark of quality that differentiates advisors from others. And as I say, that gold mark goes one step beyond, and it shows a real depth of business understanding and professional service delivery. So yeah, great to hear that not only are you tapping into the BLP subsidies for your clients, but you're also using your BLP status as a selling point, I guess. You've got a business. You've just launched your business in Fiji as well, haven't you, Raj?
Yes, I've since registered in Fiji as well, which is obviously as a result of this, and our connection with Business Assistance Fiji has been great. And I think some of the advantages of being a gold mark advisor, BLP is forever supporting us, and I think throughout they've been building our capacity to be better advisors. So that has been working so far so good. And I've also managed to make connections through in other countries in the Pacific with a few advisors. So yeah, definitely it is becoming something very important for me and the practice.
Awesome. Well, as I say, great to hear that you're tapping into the services and you're using the BLP approval status and that gold mark to differentiate yourself from other advisors. So great to be introduced, and welcome along, everyone. Good to see we've got some good numbers joining us. And let me just give you a quick run through of what we're covering off today. So firstly then, quality standards for business advisors. That's what we're talking about today. So Raj and I are going to have a bit of a discussion on 3 key topics to do with quality standards for business advisors. We'll talk about what we mean by professionalism and high quality when it comes to advisory services. We'll talk about how to manage privacy, confidentiality, and conflicts of interest, all really important things that business advisors need to be mindful of. And then we'll have a bit more of a chat about the BLP Gold Mark, that very special quality stamp that BLP has for approved advisors, that only the very best advisors, Raj, get, those that have got good systems and processes. So that's what we're going to cover off today. Just a very quick run through of our format though for today. Can I ask our participants, please, if you wouldn't mind just turning off your microphones and your cameras? That kind of helps with ensuring everyone can hear the speakers. Please feel free though to ask questions throughout the webinar. You can use the chat box, and we do welcome your thoughts and comments throughout the whole time if you use that chat box. There will be a specific time for questions at the end, so please do put your comments in there as you go. And you can also, if you want, use the raise hand button if you'd like to say something. Sometimes it's easier to say it than write it, I know. Now, we are recording the webinar today, and of course the recording will be available afterwards along with all our other webinars. So if you want to recap on anything or share it with your colleagues, it'll be saved on the BLP website. So for those who aren't familiar with what we do here at Business Link Pacific, the program's funded by the New Zealand government. It's managed by DT Global. We work across 12 Pacific countries, as listed on the slide, and each country has a locally based business service manager, or BSM as we call them, that helps both businesses, small medium-sized enterprises, and business advisors to make full use of the BLP services. So we help SMEs find suitable advisors, and then we also help them with the cost of those advisors' services through the BLP subsidy scheme. So as you'll hear more about today, BLP approved advisors do go through a quality assurance and a competency assessment process, and that's so that SMEs or clients can feel confident that they're being supported by experienced, high quality advisors. We've got some of the services listed on this slide as well. So BLP offers a range of services. There's our online diagnostic tools, for example, things like the health check, the business continuity planner. There's the finance facility. Of course, you're no doubt aware of the various grants that BLP has offered to businesses, adaptation grants, business support grants, and we'll soon be looking at co-investment grants. We also offer professional development and learning opportunities for advisors, of course, and that's why we're here today. Just briefly, where things are at with BLP right now. Well, it's in its second phase. It's been going since 2017, 2018. We now have around 200 partner advisory firms with over 220 individual approved advisors. And they've given access to over 1,000 SMEs that have received subsidies for their services. BLP's provided over $4.5 million New Zealand dollars from its initial grant rounds, and that's helped to trigger access to new investment and finance, and of course the creation of new jobs. So it's been pretty successful on that front. And the online tools, they've been pretty popular with around 5,500 downloads from SMEs. So these services are, of course, continuing, and the demand for high quality advisors is ever growing. So it's good to be talking about this particular topic. So without any further ado, that leads me back to today's webinar, which is, as I say, all about the importance of quality advisory services and what it takes to be a high quality advisor. So let's get into our first topic, so professionalism and what that entails. So we've broken this down into kind of three key things. So ethics, skills, and service model. So Raj, if we talk firstly about ethics, business ethics, or code of practice. I mean, I suppose we all have different ethics and backgrounds as business advisors, but I guess there's some lines that you must not cross. Raj, in terms of ethics, I mean, do you think we've captured the key things that businesses expect from a business advisor, or, you know, in terms of ethics? I mean, we've got a few things listed up on that slide. Do you think that's the right sort of stuff?
Absolutely, Barbara. And these are very important, more of soft skills, and we often get clients, who will want to get things out of you through questionable means, and that also creates a red flag, of course, and also poses a legal issues. So we do have to be mindful of our ethics, how we carry ourselves, the introspective information that we have. The clients probably would want us to propose techniques and such as manipulating figures and misrepresenting transactions. So we have to be on top of our ethics.
Yeah. So from your experience then, Raj, what sort of issues do you think can arise for business advisors relating to business ethics or code of
conduct? Certainly, Barbara. So as I mentioned, earlier, the clients will, let's look at the accounting side of things. Most advisors here probably provide that service as well, and often the businesses would want to lower the taxes and VAGSTs, and that's very common, and among anything else, I do face that as well. And so the way to look at it is we look at the legal way of doing things. We see there's, of course, we can have reduction in taxes, but through what we see that we can do legally. For instance, we can use accelerated depreciation for depreciating something for the full year, and then lower taxes. So that could be one of the ways of doing it. So we have to do it through the legal means, and and we have to maintain our ethics standard. So we kind of like torn. Sometimes we can be like torn between satisfying the clients and upholding ethical standards. So I would think our advisors here would feel the same almost every day of their practice life.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there's often a balance, isn't there, between, you want to serve your client, and that your client, like in your example, they don't want to pay more tax than they have to, but you've still got to uphold the law. And yeah, so I think that's really important. Have you ever had like an ethical dilemma in your advisory career?
Yes, I was asked to reduce, VAGSTs. And they say, oh, we're paying too much, and like I said, we had to go through means that were within the legal framework. So we managed that that way. Certain times it's difficult to do that, but in most cases we are able to assist clients through legal ways, and advise them how to manage them better.
Right. So the bottom line, it seems to me that there's kind of three key things that advisors need to be clear on when it comes to ethics. And that's firstly, you do need to have some knowledge about the law, and certainly, within the legal framework that business and your advisory business is working in. I guess you also need to understand your position as an advisor. You're not the decision maker about your client's business. That's their job. And then I suppose the other thing is you need to know who you're working for, i.e. you're working for the client. So you want to do your best for the client, and that's part of your ethical kind of way of being. But of course, you also you can't break the law in servicing your client's needs. So Yeah, no, I think that's a really important area to cover off. Ethics, it's the founding principles of being a business advisor, and great examples that you showed there. So let's move on now to the skills and attributes of an advisor. So slightly different to ethics, I guess. What sort of skills do you need to develop, do you think, as a business advisor?
Certainly, Barbara, thanks. I think effective business, requires us to have empathy, which fosters trust, and allows advisors to understand, their clients' needs. And, good listening, of course, it's second to none. We need to understand exactly what the client is saying, what their requirements are. We have to actively engage with our clients. Often clients and advisors can get on different pages. The client expectations will be something else, and what you are proposing would be different. And we need to be mindful of the unique challenges as MSMEs face, definitely. And that's something that if we do not have that understanding, then we cannot relate to the problems and the issues the clients are facing. Other than that, of course, we need to have a strong understanding of business management practices. And, this ensures that advisors can offer comprehensive advice across various aspects. And, and of course, if we do not have the technical skills to provide the services, then that is, certainly something that you need to work on. And we need to have that specialized skill in a specialized space to be able to provide that specialized service to the client.
And I think that's a good point, actually, that you raised there. It's not just about the technical skills. I mean, yes, you need that. So whether you're an accountant, a lawyer, a marketing person, or IT, or whatever, that technical expertise is often the starting place. But people often forget that there's a whole bunch of other skills that you need as an advisor, those more sort of generic attributes that you've spoken about. So do you think, like on the list that we've got on the slide, do you think there are any that are more important than others?
Of course, as we mentioned, each skill is, plays a vital role in effective advisory. But the top two, empathy and, of course, good listening skills, sort of stand out particularly and as particularly crucial. And the reason is, empathy enables us to understand, our clients' perspectives, feelings, and motivations. So we need to really put yourself in their space to be able to understand. You have to show empathy at all times, and I think that will get you closer to the client. And if you just go as an advisor, you need to start, your sessions, your advisory services to be centered around empathy. Always respect. And of course, we spoke about listening. And if from the onset we were able to listen to the client and communicate effectively, we understand their requirements, we will never have a disagreement, and we'll be able to deliver the right type of service that they require, sort of analyzing them. So listening is really important, to get the whole thing from them. And of course, we can say that we can empathetically listen, putting yourselves into their space. So sort of that will set the benchmark for effective advisory.
Yeah. No, I think I'd agree with that too. Empathy and listening skills, it's at the heart of any relationship. But if you're to truly service your client well, you've got to understand where they're coming from, and you can't do that without those two things. So I think you're right. And some people might say that actually you have to be in business yourself to be able to truly empathize and to actually, you know, truly understand what it takes to be a business advisor. Do you agree with that?
Well, this one is interesting. You know, we don't want to deter any prospective advisors, but I sort of kind of agree to this. You know, while formal training and experience certainly contribute to understanding SMEs, first-hand experience, you know, in operating a business definitely helps. And you can only start putting yourself in somebody's space and in shoes when you have done something. And if you have overcome something, you challenges. Because certain things in advisory, which I must emphasize here, it's easier said than done. We can have so many advisors come from these different areas into the Pacific, into the islands, and those are all very theoretical. And you know, in saying that, you can come with a lot of by the book solutions to the Pacific, but they will certainly all not work you know, over here. So we need to be we need to have that expertise and experience and in the business itself. But
Yeah.
like I said, this is not deterring any you know, advisors or prospective advisors. There's always, you know, you can always develop around this. And you're being an advisor is, again, you are in a business, right? So
yeah,
so
no, I think that's a really good point. I mean, the bottom line is all of these things are learnable, but it helps. It helps if you've got those skills. It helps if you've been in business. It really helps if you understand that from your own experience. But empathy is learnable. All of these things are learnable. So no, I think that's a really good point. The last thing I want to talk about when it comes to professionalism is really about having a clear service model. So, you know, like being a business advisor isn't just about having good business ethics and the right skills and attributes. It is also about having a systematic approach to dealing with your clients, isn't it? Can you tell us a little bit more about how that should look, how that system should look?
we should have a clear service model, of course. And if you look at you know, the coaching model as represented by Peter Hawkins from the 1980s, we need to contract, listen, explore, action, and review. In saying that each session objectives, we need to you know, we need to understand this each objective of each session. We need to listen to our client, to the coach's focus area, their thoughts, their emotions, and we need to explore deeper into emotions. Then, you know, their current situations, desired changes, you know, goal connections, before we could action and review, you know, the actionable steps. So yeah, setting clear communication, goals, deliverables, clear, fair pricing, and doing what we say we're going to do. We did discuss this a little bit back, you know, in a couple of slides back. And this is where, again, we're talking about clearly communicating and setting that goal and, you know, having that skill.
I like that model. I like that sort of, excuse the pun, the clear model. It is simple and it's clear. But I guess the key thing that I take away from this is that it is the advisor's responsibility to have that process, and certainly to clarify that process for working together with the client. It's not the client's responsibility. It's your responsibility as an advisor. So even though it might be the client that decides what happens and what the advisor does, the advisor needs to ensure that, you know, you're on the same wavelengths, essentially. So I think, you know, having that clear service model is absolutely critical. So no, that's really good points to cover off there. All right, so let's move on now to the next topic, which is on privacy, confidentiality, and conflict of interest. And I suppose these could also be considered business ethics, or certainly they relate to that, as we've said before. But I would say that these are the things that you absolutely need to have very clear systems for. So let's have a closer look at what advisors need to do to ensure they manage these things carefully. So firstly then, when we talk about privacy and confidentiality, well, they're actually two different things, really, aren't they, Raj? Can you explain the difference?
Yes, definitely, Barbara. When dealing with individuals, personal information, advisors, we must always be mindful of privacy and confidentiality concerns. And yes, it is, all our topics will be interrelated, of course, and it does have elements of ethics. So privacy basically involves protecting personal information, like someone's date of birth, from unauthorized access or disclosure, while confidentiality focuses on safeguarding institutional information, such as company financials, intellectual property, business plans, and so forth. Yeah.
Right. So one's more about the individual behind the business or involved in the business, and the other one is about the business itself. So we need to be really careful how we manage both of those things. So just thinking firstly about personal or private information, can you just run through the sorts of ways that you can manage that?
Yes, certainly. So there's a wide range of ways of doing that, and so confidential information beyond just financial data. So this includes the strategies, the planning. So may contain sensitive information leading to conflicts of interest, issues relating to insider trading. And we all have to be mindful of that. And so in terms of the information, we need to make sure that we collect information directly from the owners themselves, not from any other sources. We should be transparent about how it is used, why it is used, and who will use it. Of course, storing the data securely, making sure they are logged or in the drive, password protected, and enable people to access and correct information. So certain times you'll have user access controls and access to drives, and who has different accesses. Yeah, and it is be used for the intended purpose. And whenever we do not need it, we need to be those data need to be destroyed. And in terms of reporting, it should be only reported to the right audience and to the where it's needed. Yeah.
So, I mean, during the course of business, depending on the sort of business that your client has, they do collect quite a lot of personal information about employees, about clients, and also that means that as an advisor, you also have access to some of that information. So, and you might need it as well in order to help the client. So we've got to be extra careful about how we manage that personal information when it actually belongs to the client as well. So, I mean, I think those are really sound principles for managing personal individual information. I mean, I've had a client, for example, that works in the training field. So they collect a lot of information about learners. So they collect their date of birth, their home addresses, their qualifications, all of that sort of stuff, which is actually really sensitive information. So yeah, you do need to be really careful how you store that stuff and how you use it. And often those things are shared between institutions. Like I know my client shares it with NZQA. So you've got to get that permission. That's the New Zealand Qualifications Authority. So you've got to get that permission up front from from those individuals. So no, that's really sound advice there for managing individual personal information. So then when it comes to confidential information, so this is more about business information. Again, I think, sometimes we sort of skip over what we think is confidential and what's not. So what sorts of things in business tend to be confidential? I mean, you mentioned before about financials, obviously, but I mean, let's just have a bit of a chat about that, because I think, there's a lot of stuff that gets forgotten.
Yes, as mentioned earlier, once we are in the advisor space, there's a lot of information that we collect and we have access to. And, the business plans, their business strategies, and those things, that they remain with you, and that could be easily shared, or you could be using it to, develop another business or a similar business. So it's just not only the financial data, it's business strategies, planning documents, sensitive information about some personal information as well while we are doing the advisory, because they have the clients have so much confidence in you. They would tell you, okay, this is what happened, this is how the business started, and what they've done so far, and what they're thinking of doing, and how their family stuff went. So we had to maintain those information, for that particular client, and be mindful that that doesn't get shared or is not available to anybody else, and so their competitive advantage and should remain with you, and you need to be very, very careful about that.
Yeah, that's true. And I think what we've got on the slide here around anything that's not in the public domain, basically, I think as a business advisor, you have to treat as confidential. So if you've only got access to that information because of your role in advising the client, then treat it as confidential. And the other thing there, like even information that you've developed, so you might have done some sort of analysis and then presented it back to the client, that's confidential, even though you've produced it yourself. You can't go and share that with someone else. It belongs to the client. So, really important messages, I think, on that slide. And I think that, the other thing is confidential information is tantamount to intellectual property. So often we only think of formal things like patents and trademarks and copyright, etc., as intellectual property. But actually, all of those other confidential things, they can also be intellectual property. I mean, I've got as I say, I've got a client that's in the training sector, and I know for any advisors out there that are trainers, I mean, this is quite a challenging area. So, for example, if you've designed and developed a training course in your own time, and then you sell that to a client, then the intellectual property belongs to whom? These are some of the questions, right? So if you've designed it and developed it in your own time, then it belongs to you, right, as the trainer or as the advisor. But if, on the other hand, a client asks you to design and deliver a training program and they pay you for your time in doing so, your time in developing and designing it, then the intellectual property belongs to the client. So, it's really quite interesting how, you got to be so careful about who owns what. And it all stems from confidential information. So, yeah, those are some of the things, I guess, on the slide that could be intellectual property. Anything else you want to add to that, Raj?
Yeah, just, similar to confidentiality, of course, IP, intellectual property, it includes a wide range of assets as on the slide at the moment, and including processes, systems, plans, reporting templates. So as advisors, it's crucial to handle the client's secrets and tools of trade with care. So that's what I want to emphasize on. Taking care of the secrets and tools of trade, which is exclusive to them. And obviously, as you mentioned, when we develop plans, so business plans and strategies, that's one of the very the common examples. When we develop those for the clients, you will have a similar client, and what do we do then? So, so you have to see the difference between the two businesses, and we have to develop the two clients. Or if it's really close and they're in direct competition, we might not be able to take that client on board. What is your thought on that, Barbara?
Well, that's true, and I think we'll probably talk about that very shortly when it comes to conflict of interest. So, I mean, these are some of the things that, as advisors, we've got to be really mindful of. Are we setting ourselves up to be in a difficult position? So, you're absolutely right, and a lot of it stems around this intellectual property idea. So let's just whip over, though, what are some of the ways to manage confidentiality? So as a business advisor, you do get access to a wide range of information. And actually, I just want to skip back. Client lists, things like that we forget about. That's actually really important. Having a really great list of clients or customers that you're going to sell your product to is a huge thing, and often we get access to that very quickly. So these can make a big difference. You can't share that with someone else, so just being mindful of that. So what are some of the ways then to manage those sensitive documents? Can you just share that with us and just run through these things on the slide?
Yeah, definitely. We got to identify the sensitive information, recognize and label sensitive data, maintain extra security measures around it. We should ensure that private setting for client meetings, certain times we might say, okay, let's meet at a coffee shop, and there are several people there, and you can easily somebody can easily tap into or listen to your conversation. So we need to make sure that our meetings are conducted privately and in private environments. In terms of
that's actually a really good point, Raj, because we often, as advisors, we often do use cafes as our place of business. But I suppose this is where you have to be a little bit discerning about the sort of conversation that you think you're going to have with a client, or maybe you might have to park that conversation if you think it's not going to be a suitable place. So, is it appropriate to have this conversation in a cafe? Maybe not. Maybe we should take it somewhere else. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. We often say our advisors from the Pacific would agree. There's a lot of meetings happening in the cafeterias.
Yeah.
Anyway, that has to be obviously that you wouldn't realize, but people are sort of can overhear you, so in terms of locking your computers, in certain times we're rushing, and even in the cafeteria setting example we'll just leave your computer there, and we'll just take a moment out, and then somebody can actually see something, okay, or strategies for developing a new money transfer in some, for instance, and that headline itself will tell you a lot of things. So locking your computers, when unoccupied, of course, secure with passwords, lock screens, shut down computers at the end of the day, so that they're logged, and sensitive information when leaving a room or any meeting, so we should securely store those confidential documents, or you carry it along with you, because somebody can just, like I said, one view, a snapshot view of any document can give them a lot of ideas, or anybody a lot of ideas.
Yeah.
Keys and keys and access cards, etc., should be secured. Passwords shouldn't be written down on documents and access cards and PIN numbers. Another common example is the printouts. We often print and something doesn't print, and then you reprint, and you've taken quickly because you're running to a meeting, you leave the other documents, and then it prints out later. So we need to see if some things in the printer queue and etc. before we actually leave. And certain times or most of the time, you might leave some very sensitive information on the printers. So we need to be careful of that. And other common one is, we like so much of what we have written on the whiteboards that we don't want to delete them anymore. So because you wrote about that.
Yeah, and I think the things that we've got on this slide, I mean, they're just basic disciplines that we need to get into as business advisors, right? I mean, these are the things that we should always do with that thinking. Okay, now I'm conscious of time, but I do want to whip into conflicts of interest, because this is a very big topic and very important one. So firstly, what sort of things can be or become or even be perceived as conflicts of interest? So yeah, I mean, I guess the slide captures and categorizes those things. Can you just talk us through some of those things then, Raj?
Yeah, definitely, Barbara. Yes. So self-dealing, of course, advisors disclose financial interest in recommended companies to avoid conflicts. Example is advisor recommends purchasing goods from a company they have a stake in. And obviously, insider trading, advisors avoid using confidential client information for personal gain. And, the one example could be the advisor could use client's budget information to benefit their own property sale. And nepotism, it's very common, and mostly in the HR space around the Pacific, I would say. We should avoid favoritism towards family and associates, disclosing any influencing relationships. And I did mention that family members in recruitment decisions is a common one. Competitor engagement. Advisors maintain client strategy confidentiality to protect their competitive advantage. An example of that will be, client A, the advisor sort of revealing client A's innovative marketing campaign to client B. And, so that could be a real difference. And, because the client is now engaging you to do, their work. And then you could, if you did that, easily the competitor could benefit and you could benefit. So we need to manage that conflict. And as we mentioned earlier, that would you take up two clients of the same nature, or resort from side by side, with their marketing campaigns? So,
yeah, probably putting yourself in a tricky situation there. Yeah. Okay, I mean, I think just going back to sort of that insider trading or that self-dealing, I mean, the bottom line with that is, you know some stuff and then you use that information for your own ends. I mean, that's just the biggest no-no, really, when it comes to being an advisor. But there's an easy way around it, and that's that you disclose that you know some stuff, or you remove yourself from the situation. But I guess we'll get into that shortly. The other thing that you mentioned about nepotism, well, I suppose what I'm thinking about that is that in the Pacific, we all kind of know one another and we're all somehow related. So, it's quite hard to avoid even employing a friend or an associate or a family member or a friend or, whatever, in an organization. So, how do you deal with that sort of stuff? And I guess, again, it's about disclosure, isn't it? And even with supply arrangements, I mean, I've had business advisors who say, oh, look, I've got this great friend who can help you out with that. And they refer you to a friend, but I know that it's a friend of the advisor. And so, you know, it's been disclosed up front, so it kind of doesn't matter to the same degree if it's disclosed. So there's no, yep, sure, you've referred me to a friend that they might be favoured, but at the end of the day, it's the client's decision. And I come back to what we said at the beginning about ethics, you know, knowing your responsibility. You can refer, you can advise, but the bottom line is it's the client's decision about who they take with that, as long as you've disclosed everything. So, I mean, that's a really important thing when it comes to nepotism, I think. What about those last two, gifts and bribes, and then the personal use of assets? How are they conflicts of interest or potential conflicts of interest?
Gifts and bribes, so for example, the advisor might accept a commission for favoring a product over the others. So you know, that's you know, and that's basically a bribe, you know, and because you have that information, and you know, you. But then again, as you mentioned, that we might just be saying because, you know, because we know, we just can recommend, you know, and disclose that, okay, we know of a supplier, you may want to engage them, you know, something. We did that, then you're in a better space and you've managed that situation well. And you know, certain times, you know, personal use of assets. An example is say the advisor using a client's proprietary technology, you know, whatever being developed for the client, and we could, you know, say generate a list of policies and procedures and use it for your own, you know, for your own personal, you know, business endeavors. So that's about the last one.
Yeah, no, I think those are really good examples. But the bottom line is it's about disclosure, right? Yeah, I mean, John, you've just come in with a little comment there saying that conflicts are inevitable in small Pacific communities, and we must be acutely aware and disclose these. And that is the way to handle it, isn't it? So you've got a couple of examples there. BLP referred to clients who were key competitors in the same industry. I couldn't do both. New clients were referred outside of BLP wanting to buy a business owned by two friends. You had to declare it and not do that work. These are some of the things that we have to do, right? Thanks for sharing that, John. These are some of the things that we have to do as business advisors. I mean, I guess that's the common theme, is disclosure, transparency. And it's not about just dealing with the actual conflict of interest. It's also about managing for a potential conflict of interest, or even worse, a perceived one. You know, so it might not be a conflict of interest at all, but it could look like one. So you've still got to manage that as well. And the bottom line is, here's the way to deal with it. So set some policies, be transparent, declare your interest, remove yourself when you have to, or decline that work, and disclose those connections, loyalties, and interests. And it's as simple as that, really. But we're the ones, the advisor is the one that has to be mindful of all of that. So no, thanks for that, John, and thank you, Raj, for going through that pretty sensitive topic, I think. So lastly then, let's talk about the BLP advisor approval process and achieving the gold mark. So, as many of you will be familiar, the BLP approved advisors are already experienced business advisory practitioners. They're not people that are learning on the job. They're not learning how to become an advisor. They are already experienced, and so they're already offering high quality services. And that's why we do a competency assessment, and that competency assessment is a pretty rigorous approval process that requires people to talk about their experience of being an advisor. So if you haven't had the experience, then you can't talk about it. We have a rigorous process for a reason, and that's because we do get a lot of people who aren't experienced advisors who want to become part of the BLP network. We've got taxi drivers, we have hairdressers, we have shop owners, we have often business managers, a lot of people who are probably, they've probably got some great skills actually, and probably some really great business experience, but it's not the same as actually being in an advisory practice and delivering sellable advisory services. And that's really what we're meaning when we talk about being a business advisory service provider at BLP. So yeah, can't express enough how important it is to be experienced and selling those advisory services. So as you'll see on this slide, there's 3 steps in our competency assessment. Step 1 and step 2 is required to become approved, and you only need 1 of 17 technical competency areas or technical advisory services. You only need 1 to be approved. But then the gold mark is optional, and it takes you through that further process. So as you can see from the slide, we're starting to look for examples of where you've thought about how you demonstrate your empathy skills, examples of how you manage some challenges with clients, how you communicate, how you diagnose problems, and how you come up with solutions. What sort of systems and processes and methodologies do you have for doing that? How do you implement your services? And then we're looking for evidence that even how you manage your consulting practice, around visibility. How do you promote your own service? What sort of client base do you have? How do you manage confidentiality and conflict of interest? And last but not least, what sort of systems do you have in place for reviewing your own performance as either an individual or as a practice? And that's really important as well. And so that's step 3. We really hope that it guides you and it gives you, as Raj was saying, it did for him, it gives you a bit of a framework to work towards around how to set up and manage your experience as an advisor. So if you haven't got certain practices in place, then we hope that gives you some clues around what you need. And then you might have to come back to that process. If you're wanting to get that gold mark, then you might have to come back and forth like Raj did. Once you've got the experience, you can talk about it and say how you've managed these things. So yeah, that's a little bit about the BLP Gold Mark. Raj, was there anything else you wanted to add around that from your experience?
Yes, Barbara, thanks so much. And from the beginning, I did mention that I did this over time, and the assessments and things were there from 2020, 21. But we couldn't do it at that time because we did not have that expertise and that much of experience and real life examples dealing with the clients. So over time, the process became a valuable exercise, for me. Going back and revisiting, reflecting on what I've done so far, and then I go back and do some write-ups. And, finally, we managed to complete that last year. And from that, the process has prompted me to evaluate my practice, and guide my advisory services, build on our business strengths, and see the weaknesses, develop policies and procedures for my practice itself. And that has given me a lot of mileage, getting the gold mark, and overall my business has started to benefit as well. The real example, the first example is this is my first, I've been invited as a guest in a webinar, and this already has started to look good for me personally, and my business as well. And we've expansion plans, and they're all part of the capacity building that BLP has undertaken. So yes, it's not difficult. The process would be much fun and interesting when as you build on the your practice, and as you work with different client sets and different levels of organization, different people, you would be able to start writing, and the team at BLP, of course, Barbara and the team with the with the assessment criteria and all, they're very helpful. They guide you through the process, and then of course you need to provide them enough information before you get any approvals, of course. Yeah, Barbara?
Yeah, no, that's right. And I think, John, I'm just looking at your comment there too. Can our previously lodged grant reviews, etc., be used as evidence? Well, yes, but you do have to talk about them. And I think the key point that we're trying to make here is that by writing it, and I know it's a pain sometimes to have to write what you've done, but it's the actual writing process that helps you reflect and think about your systems and processes. So yeah, no, it's not about us finding the answers for ourselves. It's about you finding the answers through your experience of what you've done to demonstrate what where your skill sets and where your systems are at as an advisor. So thank you so much for that, for those comments, John. And Raj, thank you very much. Now, any other questions about the webinar, about anything we've covered today? Let's just have a look. All right, Lenise, thank you. Will BLP actively promote the services of BLP advisors with the Gold Mark? Well, yes, we do. We publish them on our Facebook channels. There's certainly a lot of promotional stuff that's done through social media on our advisors. How would you help promote our services apart from our own internal business improvements? What other benefit is there for us to get this mark? Well, hopefully it's becoming clear that even going through the process itself is to be seen as being a benefit. Yes, I get that it's a bit of work, but that's a learning experience. It's a reflecting learning experience, and it does help you think about your practice. So that's the first benefit, is actually just doing it. And then, as I say, once you've got it, there's very few people that have got it. So I mentioned before, we've got about 220 odd approved business advisors. We've got about 12 or 13 people with the Gold Mark. So you're in an elite group if you've got it. So you will get some promotion on that, absolutely, through BLP. Thank you for that comment and question, Lenise. Any other questions or anything that we've covered today? And feel free to raise your hand if you want. Okay, so we've got a question here. Cultural undertraining might be pivotal in addition to the advisor attributes. Yes, that's true. That's a really good point. Is receiving a roasted pig to thank you for a completed engagement and lunch considered a gift and a conflict of interest? Do you tell clients to take it back? Oh, that's a really good comment. What are your thoughts on that, Raj?
Well, I was just thinking of pig is a delicacy, of course. Yes. So when you have worked with a client, and they've gifted you that as an appreciation, I don't see that as a conflict. And if somebody else was giving you, to pass on that information to them, that would be a conflict and a drive. So
I think that's a really great example, and thanks for that. We do get shouted things as advisors. We get shouted meals, we get shouted coffees, we get shouted all sorts of things. And I think there's a judgment that comes into it, isn't there? Like sometimes there's a cultural judgment, as you say, and it might be rude not to accept. And so, we have to be mindful of that. We have to be mindful how it might be perceived by others, and then make a judgment call. So I think for me, I'd be tucking into that pig and thanking the client very much for that, and also trying to reciprocate as well if I could at some stage. So a really great comment, and I like that one. Thank you. Any other comments or questions, anyone? All right. Well, look, I'd just like to thank everyone for joining us today. We have got further information on our BLP website that you can check out. So there's the advisor network page. You can also check out, there's a page on standards that you can expect of a business, a BLP advisor. There's some tips for completing the competency assessment as well. And actually, you're also welcome to email me directly if you need any help and if you're going through the competency assessment at the moment.